Yeah, next week. Very good. Michael rode the boat ashore.
30 seconds.
Hallelujah. Campfire songs with Pat and Todd.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. Todd Allbaugh here on a Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. It's a great day to be a Wisconsinite. 6 minutes past the hour of 12 noon, along with our outstanding producer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. Glad to have you along, Mr. Zommers. It's Wednesday. That means
Hump Day.
Indeed. Here we are on Hump Day. Always a pleasure to be with you. Lots to get to today. Hour number 2. Yes, a What's Worse. And Trygve Olsen, who had planned on being here at hour 1, heard he had a birthday a couple of weeks ago. And so now he's even closer in age to Pat Kreitlow. So we can't lord that young buck stuff over you anymore. And so Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio, he's not going to be here till hour 2. He's avoiding you.
What is he suddenly getting forgetful at his advanced age already? As far as telling time, is he oriented properly to person, place, and time?
I'm not. He's on the Geritol now, so
I guess that'll mess you up, man.
I know. So he'll be here in hour 2. Talk a little bit about what's happening in the 119th Congress, being out there in D.C. and being a former aide to a couple of different U.S. senators out there. Of course, he's now the senior advisor at the Lincoln Project. Talk about what may be happening in the weeks and months ahead in Washington, D.C. As I said, we also have a What's Worse for you and take a look at other headlines around the state of Wisconsin. But as we said, the aforementioned Pat Kreitlow, you can hear him every morning between 6 and 8 from beautiful Lake Wissota on Up North News Radio across Civic Media's radio network. Patrick, happy holidays, happy New Year. We haven't talked to you on the show since the New Year. How are you?
That's right. No, it was a wonderful holiday break, including a week-long break to just be grandpa to our 2 younger grandkids, 5 and 2. A lot of fun. But it's also nice to kind of resume a normal routine without all the aches and pains that come from chasing the aforementioned 5-year-old and 2-year-old. So it was good all around.
That's good. Well, calmness. Is Lake Wissota frozen over yet?
Oh, yes, very, very much so. It's very sunny, very peaceful here. The ice is very smooth, I'm told. Very good for ice skating and other things that people are doing out there. So for the ice fishing part of winter recreation, that's looking very promising, but clearly a lot of folks would like a lot more snow here in this part of Wisconsin, and if we could send some over to Southern California too, that would be really nice. They could use anything there right now. That is just, I feel so bad for them.
Yeah, I appreciate the transition. That's where I was going to go next. And just, I know people listening on the network have heard CBS and ABC News at the top of the hour, but this is a major story. And I know, as Pat said, it might not affect us directly here in Wisconsin, but I have some close friends who I talked to this morning out in the Los Angeles area, and they said they've been out there essentially their whole lives, and this is bad. It's really bad. They said they're not directly in danger right now, but they said the whole air and everything filled with smoke and soot and burning ashes. It is not a good situation in Southern California. Last I heard about an hour ago, the update out there in LA County that this fire, the scary thing is it's 0% contained.
Right.
And with the Santa Ana winds right now bearing down on parts of just outside the Hollywood Hills, as they say, just outside of Santa Monica and West Hollywood, apparently over 1,000 structures have been lost so far. I believe so far 2 people, firefighters and a firefighter and another person lost their lives so far. The California governor has deployed the California National Guard at this hour to help with Governor Gavin Newsom to help with the situation. And as Pat said, thinking about all those folks out there, the Palisades fire and other ways, Pat, not fun at all.
No, and I was watching one reporter in a place called Pacific Palisades, which is just outside of the city, I guess, of Los Angeles, and saying that for all intents and purposes, Pacific Palisades is gone. And that when people go, well, where did this all come from? This is essentially a wind storm, is how they're describing it. It's just, again, that perfect setup of a high pressure system to the north, a low pressure system to the south. The way that they spin, it's like putting LA right in the middle there, and the wind is just howling at 40 to 90 miles an hour at times. They haven't had substantial rains in about 2 years in some parts. And so, I mean, when you get wind like that, and we can insert the climate change part later, but again, stronger rainstorms, stronger droughts, stronger windstorms, you have the conditions right in place for something like this to happen. And it's just it's a tragedy. Anywhere we live, we could be prone to that particular thing, whether it's a hurricane that hits the right way in Florida, or a drought here that turns into a fire, or a tornado, whatever the case may be. And they got caught in the bullseye of the perfect combination for such destructive fires. And, again, we wish them all the best.
Yeah, certainly. And, I've talked about with friends before. For my money, Pat, hard to beat living in Wisconsin. I mean, yes, as you said, occasionally get the tornado or a drought or whatever, but no earthquakes by and large, no hurricanes, no wildfires like this. We're pretty fortunate to live in Wisconsin, quite frankly.
Yeah, we are. And we're in what has been called in climate studies a climate haven, in that as other places suffer much more because of a changing climate, we won't suffer as much. But also, I would take great pains to point out that doesn't mean zero. There are definite impacts that we're feeling here from the weather. Again, floods, tornadoes, droughts. What it does to things like certain kind of, because of the way we would have longer droughts, you would see more, types of ticks, for example, would be able to thrive. And so you could see a big uptick in Lyme's disease, at some point down the road. So there's so many ways that all of this comes together. And when it does happen in any one place, I would hope that we would come together for them, because then again, we get accused of making everything political here, but I just know there's people out there going, "Oh, California, it couldn't happen to a better place." Right. These are human beings, and these are human beings, including a lot of people who, vote your way, and a lot of people who don't vote your way. Don't worry about that part. Just use your humanity as this happens.
Could not agree more. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. If you'd like to join Patrick and I this morning here on a Wednesday. Pat, waiting for, I think we have a caller here. We have Mark from Prairie du Sac, I believe, calling in, want to talk about the wildfires. Mark, listening on WMDX in Prairie du Sac. Mark, thanks for calling in. You want to talk about the wildfires for a second?
Yeah, well, some 10 years ago, there was a fire up in Douglas County that if it would have happened like a day or two later, the same event would have happened a day or two later, that fire wouldn't have occurred, where it took out a chunk of the county there, including a lot of vacation homes and homes, that because a spark dropped from a piece of logging equipment, I think it was, that and wasn't put out right away, it sparked and continued to burn. And I know it took up places, people's lake homes and a good chunk of the county. I think it was over $1 million in fire suppression expenses, that nowhere near what is happening in California. But I mean that if you have just some drought conditions in the springtime there, that you can get a fire and it can go quick. Yeah. It can go really quick, and we're not immune to it even here in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah. No, we're not. No.
Appreciate the call, Mark. Thank you so much. There you go,
Mark.
Pat. Exactly what you're talking about right there.
Yeah, we just have to keep that in mind when any kind of disaster happens. And so for us, when you see something like in Washington, D.C., where you have members of Congress who vote against disaster relief bills, but then when a disaster hits their place, they're suddenly there hat in hand. It is just a reminder that, public service isn't supposed to be so parochial that it's only help my people if something is wrong with them. Let's get people thinking about each other and set their priorities accordingly when they serve or when they give.
You just said, I wasn't planning on going there, but you just said something that sparked this. I was watching a little bit yesterday afternoon the U.S. Capitol service for former President Jimmy Carter, who, of course, passed away at 100. This is the week of mourning. Yesterday's services were in the rotunda. Speeches were given by Republican leader John Thune, House Speaker Republican Mike Johnson, Vice President, Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. And I did not know this until Vice President Harris. I mean, I knew he helped create the U.S. Department of Education and labor, well, not labor, education. What else was it? It was two agencies. But then he also, I didn't know he created FEMA in 1979. To your point, Pat, that had not been for somebody like Jimmy Carter saying, look, we need to have a national, a federal response so that all states, because, some states are much poorer than others, not able to help themselves. And so, again, part of Jimmy Carter's legacy is FEMA.
That's right. And again, it comes back to the kind of person that he was, and that was to be charitable, because while there are times when any of us are doing well, there are times when we are not. And if we're going to be one single united country rather than, a fractured checkerboard of 50 states, then we have to be prepared to step in, knowing full well we would want the same if misfortune were to fall upon our shoulders.
Yeah. Watching that service yesterday, everybody was civil. Everybody was saying kind things. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, see, they can do it if they want to be. And I mean, you were a state legislator. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago. I mean, I think there were still a few people who were being civil with one another across party aisles when the cameras weren't on from Wisconsin Eye and you were on the floor, right?
That's right. And look, there again, there's a time for everything. There's a time to debate. There's a time to really disagree, and there are times when we should be coming together. And it's about having your priorities straight. I mean, even in this legislature is only 3 days old, but I'm looking at a video from the Senate floor session right now, and the Democratic members are rightly pointing out that on this third day of the session, the very first thing being brought to the Senate floor isn't about taking care of our kids or our health or our natural resources or anything like that. It's voter suppression through, putting voter ID requirements in the state constitution. Our priorities are messed up in places like Madison and D.C. when we're looking at either voter suppression or anti-LGBTQ matters or anything divisive as the very first order of business. We should expect better.
We're up against, so we had about an hour. I'm way off today. We got a minute here before I have to go to break. I want to come back and talk. This is one of the things on the list, because I'm anxious to hear your a little bit deeper thought on this. And I think we're probably going to get to about the same place, but maybe in different ways. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, this was what you brought up, voter suppression. Literally the reason I left my former party. I left the Republican Party in 2011 because I witnessed the Senate Republican caucus trying to pass bills to suppress the vote.
Right.
Surprisingly, I don't have a real problem with voter ID in general. And we'll come back and discuss my feelings to that, the star caveat, and get Mr. Kreitlow's take on it as well. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show for a Wednesday here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Look at that, just reading my mind, Pat. Just one
I
transition
know.
after
It's
another.
like we're just the Psychic Friends Network over here. Where's Dionne Warwick when you need her?
Keep smiling. Keep dreaming on this journey with me. It's been thank you, Roger. Thank you. I couldn't remember the Department of Energy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well done. It's the mad cow, Roger. Sorry.
Brimming over from you, Calvin. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you.
Matt Nair on air, weekdays at 11 on 92.7 WMDX and the Civic Media app. Nightlight with Pete Schwaba.
I drew my brother's name one year, and we went to the mall, and I said, hey, while you're in there, grab me a Christmas card. We're doing the gift exchange later. So he walks upstairs, gets the card, hands it to me. I sign it.
I also want to get to at least a quick take from you on population rates declining in northern Wisconsin. What's going on?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
on your local
Why aren't
Civic
people
Media
having more
radio
sex in
station.
northern Wisconsin?
That was gonna be my next question.
That's what I want to know.
You know, some people
Inquiring minds want to know.
some people are doing their part. I mean,
I think it's climate change. It's too warm in northern Wisconsin, and people aren't getting it on to stay warm anymore.
I think there's not enough billboards for adult stores up there. You know, I see a lot, but I don't think there's enough. Maybe that's the problem.
it's all those lawyer billboards instead. Come on.
We don't have earthquakes in Wisconsin, but we do have shockwave.
Yeah. You got pure pleasures up here. Yeah. Not that I'd know.
This is why people watch the stream, you understand?
Yes, that's why we have a secret show.
Through all of fatherhood's first, never stop being a dad. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Fear you make.
Strap on your ice skates. Lake Wissota is smooth. And time to get out and do a pirouette up there. Join Pat Kreitlow every morning from 6 until 8 on the Civic Media Radio Network. He'll make you smile, give you some thoughts for the day, also keep you informed. Always has great guests as well. And I'm not sure how I found my way onto the guest list, but you're starting a new thing, Pat, on Fridays, a little round table.
Yes, we are. We've had some wonderful weekly guests, and we thought, well, let's add a few more voices to the mix here. And so on Thursdays, we'll talk about state news of the week. We'll still have Joe Zepecki at 6:30, but then we'll do a little panel, or we'll talk to reporters. We'll talk to elected officials. So tomorrow, for example, we're going to have Ruth Conniff from the Wisconsin Examiner on at 7:05 to talk, as you know, about Brad Schimmel's comments about the January 6th defendants that you covered so very well yesterday. We're also slated to have Assembly Democratic leader Greta Neubauer and new state Senator Sarah Kieski on to talk about what's happening in this first week of the legislative session. Then on Fridays at 6:30, we'll still have Courier Newsroom national correspondent Kia Vakil. At least I hope so, because he's in Los Angeles right now, and obviously things are busy there. But we're also going to have one of my colleagues, Billy Ball from North Carolina. He works for the Cardinal and Pine, the name of the news outlet there for Courier Newsroom, about how they're having a very contentious state Supreme Court election there. The liberal incumbent justice won, but the Republican challenger has tried recounts, has tried other appeals to try to get 60,000 votes thrown out. And every court had said, no, get out of here. The state elections board said, get out of here. But a Trump-appointed judge said, oh, yeah, you should make the state Supreme Court hear this case, which, of course, has a conservative majority. So North Carolina's Supreme Court might be on the verge of overturning the results of an election for partisan purposes. So we're going to talk to Billy Ball about that Friday morning at 6:30. And then at 7:30, we normally talk to Chicago journalist Mark Jacob about stories of the week. We talk to former U.S. Attorney Jim Santel, of course, from Amicus on Saturday mornings here across Civic Media. Sometimes we talk to journalist Jennifer Schultze. And this time around, we said, let's get them all on one round table, and let's find one more person who can really tie all of this together with his expertise and his good looks. And Trygve Olsen was not available, and so Todd, thank you very much for agreeing to be part of the panel Friday morning at 7:30.
I'm happy to be the backup panelist, break glass in case of emergency. So I'm honored to do it. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll get up and get the coffee going. So join Pat and all kinds of great new things on Up North News every morning from 6 until 8. Pat, I want your quick take. Of course, for folks that don't know, you spent a term in the Wisconsin State Senate representing the Chippewa Valley area there so well. You're familiar with this. Of course, you've been a journalist for a long time. So as you said in the last segment there, Republicans, the first order of business in the state Senate under good old Van Wangard, who I know very well, a Republican senator from the Racine area. Their first bill they pushed through the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee yesterday on a 5-3 party line vote was to put on the ballot in this April a referendum in order to codify, or a fancy word for saying, put in the Constitution a requirement for voter ID. And if people say, well, don't we already have that? Yes, we do. And as a matter of fact, I was the lead witness in a trial that went to federal court, and on not just that, but also, as Pat alluded to, all these other surrounding pieces of legislation under the Walker era to literally suppress the vote. I was witness to that. I saw that that was literally what they were trying to do, and it's why I left the Republican Party. In that federal trial, the federal judge threw out everything but voter ID because he said the U.S. Supreme Court had already ruled that in, I believe it's 9 states, including Wisconsin, that require voter ID, that the U.S. Supreme Court says that is the law of the land. So now Republicans are coming back and saying, hey, let's gin this up to get our base out for a Wisconsin State Supreme Court race. And under the auspices of, well, we don't want a quote unquote liberal court to undo this, Pat Kreitlow, would say you.
I would say that, again, Republicans are in the legislature are monkeying with the state constitution because they know that they cannot pass a bill into law that would not be vetoed by Governor Tony Evers if it were to be so overtly and nakedly partisan. And to those who would say, hey, wait, what is so nonpartisan? What is so partisan about, requiring an ID to vote? The answer is relatively simple here. And you know it as well as I do. It's about picking your voters. You've seen it with gerrymandering, where we can draw the lines. But if you also know that most of the people who don't have a lot of money, who come from communities of color, who aren't drivers, if you know they don't tend to vote for you, then you don't have to do anything really to encourage them to vote. So let's require an ID. Even though they may not have an ID, even though they may have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get it. I would say this. I would go along with that if there was a voter fraud problem. This is a solution in search of a problem. So if it's a solution in search of a non-existent problem, then you're left by logic to say, why are we doing this? Because we think that most of the people who don't have IDs on them aren't going to vote for us anyway. So we're going to spend our time making this the very first official action of this legislature is to suppress the vote. Voter ID on its face sounds good. I agree. But it doesn't solve anything because we don't have a fraud problem. So there must be another motivation for it.
I'm going to come back after the break and give you my background on knowing Senator Van Wanggaard. He's an interesting guy and kind of how he got radicalized, so to speak. But I don't really disagree with you, Pat, other than, look, I'm an independent, right? So
Right.
like nobody's coming to me and saying, hey, Todd, why don't you give some Democrats the advice? But if I were to, I would say you're in earshot or whatever you want to say of getting the assembly in 2 years. I would be thinking of terms of how do I want my candidates to run in 2 years on this stuff? And I don't think going to the voters in a year and a half and saying we were against voter ID is a winner. I think you say, look, Senator Wanggaard, I agree that only Americans should vote. But wouldn't you join me with Senator Wanggaard in saying we should make sure that that's accessible and free to all legal Wisconsin citizens? And why don't we take part of our $4 trillion surplus and fund the Department of Motor Vehicles and the staff to make sure that all Wisconsinites can get a free ID?
Actually, we don't even have to spend that much money. Let's go a step further. Automatic voter registration. Let's encourage voting. That's how you do it. Not discourage voting, encourage voting, and then win on the issues, not through trickery.
See, if Pat Kreitlow and Todd Allbaugh rule the world, and we don't, life would be so much simpler.
It would. We'd get it all done.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate you every morning, 6 until 8. Stay tuned. More on the other side. It's the Allbaugh Show on Civic Media's Radio Network.
Boom.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much.
You are very welcome. See y'all later.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
You can always continue the conversation on social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
I'm Stephanie Hoff for the Midwest Farm Report along with you. At the UW-Madison campus, researchers are looking at how laser weeding with artificial intelligence can be a tool in specialty crops. Professor Jed Colhoun explains that the laser weeder uses lots of HD cameras to identify weeds, and he says it could be a solution for the stubborn water hemp here in Wisconsin and save farmers money on herbicide.
Water hemp is one of those that has become problematic across the Midwest. Not only does it emerge over a long period of time during the growing season, but is very often resistant to at least one herbicide site of action, and several in many cases. So with this tool, we can target those problematic weeds, again, using these high-resolution cameras to detect the weeds by species, and then hitting them just in the growing point at the very early growing stage with lasers on the Carbon Robotics laser weeder.
Jed Colhoun is a plant sciences professor at UW-Madison. We'll take a look at our midday commodity prices next.
What a string of words.
Easy to remember.
There goes Pam Yankee across Wisconsin in her Suburban truck. Thanks to Equity Livestock Cooperative, marketing your livestock, financing your operation, and supporting the livestock community since 1922. And to Cleary Building Corp. Cleary Building Corp. Built with pride before the shamrock is applied. Explore clearybuilding.com today. Keep up with Pam at MidwestFarmReport.com and on Facebook and Instagram.
Giving back. It's at the heart of the Wisconsin farmer, and it starts with supporting the backbones of our community. That's why the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board invests in soy foam for our firefighters. Soy foam TF1122 is the first and only firefighting foam green screen certified at the gold level. As a PFAS-free firefighting foam, it's safe for you and the environment. A safe future for your community. Thanks to your soy checkoff. Learn more at wisoybean.org.
Commodity prices are moving a little lower today. Cash corn down a penny and a quarter at $4.56 3/4, and December new crop corn also down a penny and a quarter at $4.45 a bushel. Cash soybeans are trading 3/4 cent lower at $9.96 1/2, and November new crop beans are down 3 cents at $10.08 1/2. Cash wheat is down a nickel and a half at $5.37 a bushel, and July new crop wheat is down a nickel and a quarter at $5.57 3/4. From Chicago, Class 3 milk prices are mixed. The February contract is 7 cents lower at $20.83 a hundredweight, but the March contract is up a penny at $20.46 a hundredweight. That's a look at your midday markets on Wednesday, January 8th. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Stephanie Hoff.
Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app.
Partly cloudy and crisp today. High temperatures only climb to the low 20s and plummet to near 10 tonight. Waking up tomorrow morning, we could see some sunshine with clouds increasing and temperatures rising to the upper 20s. All ahead of some light snow moving in at night. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 19.
I'm Dan Schaefer. Let's recombobulate. The beginning of the year means a new session for the Wisconsin State Legislature. Members of the State Senate and State Assembly were sworn into office on Monday, January 6th. There are a lot of new faces in that group, with 6 new members in the State Senate and 31 new representatives in the State Assembly. While Republicans will remain in the majority, that majority is now the smallest it has been in more than a decade. The days of the GOP's supermajority are over. After last year's elections under new, fairer maps, we'll see if those smaller majorities lead to more compromise in a legislature that's been dominated by the right for nearly 15 years. Just a handful of seats make the difference now between a Republican and Democratic majority, and there are many more opportunities now to bring accountability to legislators, especially those in
doing it. Welcome back to the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along. Many thanks to Pat Kreitlow of Up North News Radio for joining us there. And the first half hour of the show, always appreciate him. Great program every morning from 6 until 8 on Civic Media. Also, if you're tuning in on a Wednesday, expecting to hear Trygve Olsen, going to be a little bit later. he had obligations out there in D.C. Maybe he's shoveling. They rarely get snow out there. No, Trigby doesn't shovel. Come on.
He could. I mean, why not?
There was a time in his life when he shoveled. My guess is he either has his daughters do it or he has people to do that.
Fair.
But Trigby will be along in hour number 2, talking a little bit about the 119th Congress, what we might be able to expect and what's going on out there in terms of going to be obviously a busy and certainly not boring out in D.C. in 2025. But right now, a couple of quick updates for you. Again, that wildfire out in the Los Angeles area on that, certainly a state emergency now. And the scary part is this thing is 0% contained and is raging by wind gusts of up to 90 miles per hour. So certainly anyone that is living out there, we're thinking of them and offering our prayers and thoughts and good vibes that everybody stays safe. Remember, lives cannot be replaced. Material things can. So people should need to just take care of themselves. But certainly a tragedy out there in Southern California today. Also closer to home, breaking news this afternoon, courtesy of WISC Channel 3000. An ice skater was rescued from Lake Monona this morning. Madison Fire Department said that the person was located, get this, 150 to 200 yards from shore, northeast of Monona Terrace. They were able to get themselves out of the water and onto the ice. A craft was deployed from Law Park a minute's way to the person on foot. The water in the area was estimated to be about 40 to 50 feet deep. Rescuers made contact with the patient on the ice and provided the person with a personal flotation device and transported them back to shore. They were taken into an ambulance and taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Madison Fire Department Lake Rescue Team advises that the area where the rescue occurred contains many ice heaves. These are areas where pressure has caused the ice to crack and move, exposing fresh water and creating areas of thin ice and instability. 150 to 200 yards offshore. That is like a football field and a half to 2 football fields. I mean, folks, I get it. You want to get out and enjoy nature. But don't be going out in the middle of it's too early. The ice, and then what gets me is you're putting our first responders, our EMS crews, our firefighters, you're putting their lives at risk. So use your wisdom. Don't be going in the middle of a lake yet. If you want to, be 10 yards offshore next to a shoreline and go ice fishing, there are places that it's fine to do that. But don't be going in the middle of a lake right now. Certainly, many thanks to our Wisconsin, our Madison Fire Department crew here in Madison, our EMS workers as well for making that rescue today on Lake Monona. Also talking about, want to follow this up, what we talked about started with Pat Kreitlow there. Republicans in the Wisconsin state legislature have made voter ID their big first kickoff. According to WisPolitics via the Associated Press, the GOP pushing to make voter ID a constitutional requirement. There was a public hearing yesterday. The Senate expected to pass it today. Assembly to give it first approval or final approval next week. Legislature passed the voter ID proposal last session and must approve it again by January 21st to get it on the April ballot. That's how these things work in Wisconsin. That 2 consecutive sessions of the legislature have to approve a referendum, and it can't be amended between the two. It has to be the exact same one consecutively to get it on the ballot. Back to the story. This would make it more difficult for Democrats to soften the 14-year-old law or overturn the requirement in court. There are no pending legal challenges to voter ID, even though the state Supreme Court has sided with Democrats in other major cases. Other states have taken similar steps in recent years to constitutionalize voter ID requirements. In Mississippi in 2011, North Carolina in 2018, while Minnesota voters rejected it in 2012. The possibility of Democrats regaining majority control have led Republicans to enact a number of constitutional amendments to protect laws that have passed. Even if the amendment was approved, lawmakers could still decide what type of photo ID is acceptable. Wisconsin voter ID law is the strictest of 9 similar photo ID laws that have been upheld in court several times. Wisconsin ID has strong public support despite Democratic arguments that the ID requirement hinders voting. What do you think? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842 on voter ID. Again, just to, not voter ID, but voter suppression was the reason I left the Republican Party. And the quick refresher, don't worry for those regular listeners, I won't go through all the bloody details again. But in 2011, when I was working for former State Senator Dale Schultz, I was in a private, a closed caucus, as they say. It's just Republican senators or Democratic ones, if you're on the other side, and their staff. And they started running down these, they called them voter support bills, they're voter suppression. And Mary Lozick, the chair of the Senate Election Committee, stood up and said, hey, we need to start thinking about what this would mean for places like Madison and Milwaukee and college campuses. In other words, passing this cadre of bills would make it more difficult for students and older people and minorities to vote. And because they tend to vote more, not monolithically, but they vote, in other words, in one block to make it easier. But by and large, those communities tend to vote more for Democratic candidates than Republicans. And my boss was the only one in the caucus to raise his hand and say, hey, we better stop and think about what you just said. And then State Senator Glenn Grothman turned to my boss and said, well, Dale, you know the Democrats would do it if they were in charge, so we better do it quick while we can. And Dale walked out in protest and told me, you stay here. And I did. And for 90 or so minutes, I listened to many Republicans, not all, but then many Republican senators in 2011 talk gleefully about what this would do politically. And none of them ever used the word or phrase voter suppression. But it was the loudest dog whistle in the room that you knew exactly what they were intending. And that's why I left the Republican Party. Because it didn't line up with what I believed in taking someone's constitutional rights away. And fast forward to 2016 when I had a coffee shop and my star barista, who happened to be from California and happened to be a person in his early 20s and happened to be Latino, who had a valid California driver's license, went to get a Wisconsin one. And because of the rules of the bills I saw formed, passed the legislature and signed into law by Scott Walker, that individual in 2016 was not able to vote. Even though he was born in the United States, a legal citizen, had a legal ID from another state. And it affected me deeply. So that's my background on this. My feeling is that I don't have a problem with voter ID per se. I mean, I have U.S. Cellular. If I go to U.S. Cellular to pay my bill, to change anything, to get any information, I have to show them a driver's license, a photo ID. So I don't have a problem with saying, okay, we're going to require a photo ID to vote. What I have a problem with is this article in which Politics and the Associated Press allude to, is all the other bills, the caveat bills that Republicans pass in order to make it more difficult to get that voter ID. So as I said before the break, if I were the Democrats, which I'm not, I would be pragmatic about this. I would, and Van Wongard's an interesting guy. He's a former cop from Racine, and the tea on him is that he joined my former boss, Dale Schultz, and the teachers union in crafting an alternative to Act 10. And then the day that it was to be introduced, he backed out because he got so much pressure from the Republicans and Scott Fitzgerald and the special interest groups. And then he was like Peter, Peter in the Bible, right? That denied Christ 3 times. He was like Peter. I knew nothing about that. I deny it. I deny it. That's a bold-faced lie. Wongard, if you get him behind closed doors, used to be. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to him in years. He was a decent guy, but he's kind of been radicalized by these MAGA people, and now he's going along with whatever they want. But if I were the Democrats, I would say, you know what, Senator Wongard, I agree that only Americans should vote, only citizens should vote. But wouldn't you also agree, Senator Wongard, we want to make sure that American citizens have access, free and easy access to an ID so that they can participate. So let's take some of the $4 trillion surplus in our state budget. Let's work with Bob Lang, the head of the budget office, the fiscal bureau, who everybody respects, Republicans and Democrats. Let's ask Bob Lang to get a figure from the Department of Motor Vehicles, the State Department of Transportation, on what it would cost to properly staff Department of Motor Vehicle stations all over the state, and then make sure that people get this voter ID. What do you think about that, Senator Wongard? You see, you put him in a box. You make it more difficult and make him look like the unreasonable person. Because if you're the first thing out of the gate is to say, "Oh, this is atrocious. Why are we doing voter ID?" It makes you look like the bad person or the bad party in the eyes of the majority of Wisconsinites. It's just not politically smart. But unfortunately, too many Democrats don't think that way. It gets into the weeds of, well, are we really representing everyone? There might be someone who's undocumented who wants to vote for a school board race in whatever town in Wisconsin, and we want to make sure they're not disenfranchised. That's a loser in terms of political expediency and winning elections. I want to win elections. So be pragmatic. Meet Republicans halfway, play their game, and say, commit to making sure, and as somebody else said, who was it, one of our texters, Mr. Zommers, saying that what about making, when you register to, or when you get your driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote. Somebody else said, how about when you're born, you get automatically registered? I mean, it gets a little bit trickier because you can't register until you're 18. To make it easier for people to register, make sure they're registered, make it easy access to voter ID, then I've got no problem. But you have to think about these terms, not just in your base on either side of the aisle, but practically in how you get it done and prepare for elections coming up in 16 months. And think about how you want your candidate to be on the stump against a Republican on this issue. Have to have calmer heads prevail instead of just constantly screeching and yelling at one another. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. John, we're up against the clock. John in Milwaukee, but go ahead. You got about 1 minute.
I listened to your comment as far as you'd be supportive if there was proven fraud. I have a different idea. I'd be supportive if we use the technology that Costco or Sam's Club uses, where you can get a card one right at the polling place, so people come in with their utility bill or whatever, and they get a card. And if Costco or Sam's Club can do this day in and day out, we should be able to do it for voting.
Yeah, no, I mean, it goes along. I'm not sure if that's exactly what I would do, but yeah, I mean, making it easier and accessible, and make sure that it's not a modern day form of a poll tax. In other words, you got to have so much money to get an ID. The law in Wisconsin right now is that you can get a legal Wisconsin ID for free. All right? It used to be in this state that if you had a valid driver's license from another state, you could just come in and switch it out. But thanks to Republican control that I saw this happen, they changed the law so that now you have to have your birth certificate or a passport or a military ID. Makes it much harder to get this stuff. It should be free and accessible and easy to get to. More calls the other side. 855-752-4842 is the Allbaugh Show for you Wednesday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA.
Oh, no, I had to register for the draft.
And progress rapidly.
Yeah, I did too.
Irreversible vision loss. Now there's something
Well,
you
yeah,
can do to
when I did it, I turned 18 back in the Stone Ages. You were required to go to the post office. Right?
is proven to slow GA
Were you required?
I was required to sign up for the draft.
Yeah.
I don't think I had to go and do it in person.
Well, no, now it's probably all online or whatever. Back in the old
did have to fill out a card. I did have to mail in a card, I believe.
Oh, really? I went to the Richland Center post office and filled out my
retinal
card.
detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Come to the Lazy Oaf Lounge to cheer on the green and gold. Enjoy free Jell-O shots with every Green Bay touchdown. Stock up on $20 buckets of White Claw and High Noon. $15 assorted buckets of Busch Light, Miller, and Bud products. Plus $4 off wing baskets when you dine in. Come for all the fun on game days at the Lazy Oaf Lounge. North Stoughton Road in Madison. Follow them on Facebook and find the full menu at lazyoaflounge.com. Max Inc. on Civic Media, live in the lair with Kaylin Cole. Have you ever walked away from a karaoke performance thinking, yeah, that was a lot better than the original person?
Oh my gosh.
Pursuing truth wherever it may lead and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. It is now 9 before the hour of 1 o'clock. At the top of the hour, news, weather, a check of sports with our great sports reporter, Mike Clemens. And then back for hour 2, where Trygve Olson, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, will be here on the show. Been a couple of weeks. Been traveling. Been following the Packers. Been playing hockey. Been unplugging. I'm very proud of Trygve. He kind of disappeared. We had a mutual friend that said, have you heard from Trygve? He's just disappeared. I said, yeah, I think he just unplugged, which is exactly what he did. Very
good
helpful
for him, because that seems like something you got to do every once in a while when you need to be as chronically online as he is for his line of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So Trygve will be plugging back in with us in hour number 2, talking about what's happening in the 119th Congress coming up in Washington, D.C., which is where he is at. We'll talk with him, and also what's worse in hour 2 as well. Right now, talking about this Republican idea. They passed it in the Senate yesterday, or the committee expected to pass it in the full Senate today, putting voter ID requirements on the ballot this April. What are your thoughts? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Jack calling in from beautiful Racine down there, home of WRJN. Jack, thanks for listening and calling in. What are your thoughts? Go ahead.
Hello, Todd. Todd, I really agree with you about the importance of voting as a right of citizens. You know, in a democracy, that's probably one of our maybe our most important right. And I certainly agree with you on that. And you know, your point about the political issue, and as a political issue in the state of Wisconsin, it became a referendum. I think you're right on there. That's an issue, but you know, because it's so important for people to vote, I think we got to look at not having a constitutional amendment, which, by the way, when it was first voted on, Wisconsin wasn't really a democracy. It was a locked-in Republican gerrymandered state. I don't think that vote should actually count, but that's a lost cause. At any rate, so I think you're right about finding other ways to get people to be able to register to vote. And of course, we got to recognize it's not just registering to vote; it's also having a birth certificate. You know, a lot of people, when they're born, they leave home, and their parents pack up their birth certificate neatly. But for a number of people, less fortunate, they don't have parents to do that, or that gets lost in a fire, or something's happened. So you got a lot of people, many really elderly people, moved from other states without birth certificates. Then they got to get out to a motor vehicle department. Some aren't open all week. People are far away. They don't have transportation to get there. You know, that's the driver's license issue. But you know, could this be done in schools? Could it be a part of civics classes throughout the state? So I like your idea of trying different ways, but it's so important that I don't see any way that unless you have those possibilities out before you, how can we make it a constitution and lock in this gerrymandered Republican voter suppression forever? What do you think?
I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said. I think there are little nuances to it, but I think number one, it's important to remember that this is already the law of the land. It's not an amendment a constitutional amendment that could possibly go to voters in April. That isn't like, oh, if it passes, we have to have it, and if it doesn't, we don't. No. It's already the law of the land, and the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that law in Wisconsin is constitutional, the law of the land. So to think that a possible future liberal Supreme Court would overturn that is, in my opinion, as a non-lawyer, a pretty far stretch. So I think that's important to remember, number one. But again, Jack, I agree largely with what you're saying, to find ways to make it easier for people to get. You're right, people in nursing homes. I had a grandmother that spent 8 years in a nursing home. As I said, the example I had, that my former barista who was born in California came to Wisconsin, his birth certificate was back in L.A. And so, yes, if you have a valid driver's license from another state, I think you should be able to switch that out for a Wisconsin driver's license or Wisconsin ID. I think that student IDs, both our university system and tech college system, private, if you are a university student, it's pretty hard to fake your identity. So I think that student IDs should be a valid form of proof to vote as well. And lots of creative suggestions from our listeners. So I'm with you, Jack. I think that we should be able to, and again, we have a $4 trillion surplus right now. I know Bob Lang, the state budget director at the Fiscal Bureau, or the Fiscal Bureau director. Everybody respects Bob Lang on both sides of the aisle. And if you don't, you're a schmuck. All right? That's the reputation you would have in the Capitol. Have Bob Lang get you a number if you're a legislator, and get it from Department of Transportation of how much it would cost to because remember, a lot of places, especially in rural Wisconsin, the DMV is only open once a week or once every other week. That's ridiculous. I've told this story before. The quick version is, during the Walker years, when they built a brand new Department of Transportation building on Sheboygan Avenue, there was a DMV office there. They built a brand new multi-million-dollar building and intentionally did not put in a DMV office on the ground floor. They rented space in far, far western Middleton, a suburb of Madison, and put the DMV for Madison way out there to make it more difficult for poor people to get to. That was intentional, to suppress the vote in Madison. That's the kind of crap that has to stop. And so, in my opinion, if you're Democrats, you put Republicans in a box. You say, we'll go along with voter ID, but you have to allocate money to make sure, or a part of the laws, to make sure that people can get these IDs freely and accessibly. Anyway, come on back. It'll be hour 2 straight ahead. Trygve Olsen, he's tan, rested, and ready. You will be too. Also, what's worse? It's the Todd Allbaugh Show for a Wednesday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. Jane Matnair and Greg Bach.
Coming up on the show, next up for the Packers, they take on the Eagles. What are their chances heading into the playoffs? We talked to Paul Noonan from the Acme Packing Company. Don't miss it.
Matnair on air. Weekday mornings at 10.
I'm hungry. What's cooking?
Oh, no, not me. It's your turn.
Oh, we're back to taking turns?
Yes.
Well, how about Sugar River Pizza?
Oh, yeah, now they can cook.
I could really go for some of that 12-hour smoked pulled pork.
Ooh, and some pasta. Okay, now I'm hungry. Sugar River, here we
And
come.
they have that great kids menu, too.
We don't have any kids.
Wait, where did you see that?
That's beside the point. The point is, I'm
But
hungry,
you're
hungry.
hungry. Let's go.
Yes, and we should talk
Oh,
about
I wasn't
having some
listening.
kids.
Get in the car, Ron. Sugar River, Sun Prairie, Verona, New Glarus, and catering.
Sugar River Pizza.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us. This is 92.7 WMDX Columbus, Madison's home for real news and great conversation. A civic media station.
This is a special report from ABC News. California wildfires. I'm Michelle Franzen. Fire crews in Southern California battling 4 major fires fueled by the fierce Santa Ana winds, now blamed for at least 2 deaths. Authorities say 70,000 are under evacuation orders and 1,000 structures have been destroyed so far. The Palisades fire, one of the largest south of Malibu, has charged some 5,000 acres and is not contained. ABC's Matt Gutman is there.
Firefighters attacking the more than 2,900-acre wildfire from the ground and the air, but the fire exploding everywhere seemingly at once. A Santa Ana wind event the National Weather Service called the worst in over a decade, turbocharging the fire. And that wildfire sparing no one, no vehicle or structure safe across Los Angeles County, home to 10 million people.
This hour, flames are licking the sweeping grounds leading to the famed Getty Museum, and the winds expected to worsen throughout the day. This is ABC News.
Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. The fundraiser for the Abundant Life Christian School community has grown and grown and grown, and now it's surpassed $240,000. And the school principal has a general outline of how that money will be used. First, it'll be put toward the families who lost loved ones to cover whatever they could need. Then it'll help pay for medical expenses of the injured. And from there, remaining money will go toward mental health resources for the Abundant Life community. Meanwhile, there's another restaurant fundraiser this week. Tomorrow, both Madison locations of Texas Roadhouse will be donating 100% of their profits to the Recovery Fund. They knew they'd be busy, so they even asked their staff for extra help, and nearly everybody raised their hand to pitch in. On Monday, about 80 Culver's locations across the state participated in the Make Your Meal Matter campaign, also benefiting the ALCS fundraiser. And a new report shows Wisconsinites are spending time behind bars for unpaid traffic and parking tickets. And that means disadvantaged people can be the most targeted. If you find yourself in a municipal court and you can't afford to pay your tickets, ACLU Senior Attorney Emma Shakeshaft says you have the right to request what's known as a poverty hearing, so you can request alternative payment. But the ACLU report says instead courts are still using aggressive tactics like jailing people for unpaid tickets.
Paying that off can be an incredibly difficult task. And for people who can't afford it, they're just continuously kept in the legal system.
You may be thinking, wait, but these aren't criminal offenses. But for some, if they're in one of the quarter or so of courts in Wisconsin that still does carceral sanctions, punishments like jail, but about a quarter of Wisconsin's municipal courts still operate this way. So even though it's not a criminal issue, it can turn into jail time. The ACLU is asking municipal courts across the state to end this practice. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX News.
Bucks basketball tonight. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. It's the Bucks and the San Antonio Spurs tonight at Fiserv Forum. Head coach Doc Rivers says Giannis Antetokounmpo continues to amaze him with his style of play.
Giannis' athletic ability, he's one dribble away from a dunk. If you don't come, he's going to score. If you do come, he's going to pass. I think it's really helped him see the floor, and that's been good for us.
College hoops, number 7th ranked Marquette, down 14 points with a comeback win over Georgetown, 74-66. College football, Badgers defensive back Xavier Lucas in a dispute with the team. Lucas wants to enter the transfer portal. The university claims he signed an agreement to remain at Wisconsin. The freshman has now hired a law firm based in Miami, Florida. NFL, the Packers installing the game plan for Sunday's matchup against the Eagles. What's the concern after losing back-to-back to the Vikings and then the Bears?
Trying to make sure that everyone's still together. Offense, defense, we get a chance to go to Philly and win on their turf.
That's Packers tight end Tucker Kraft. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
Partly cloudy and crisp today. High temperatures only climb to the low 20s and plummet to near 10 tonight. Waking up tomorrow morning, we could see some sunshine with clouds increasing and temperatures rising to the upper 20s. All ahead of some light snow moving in at night. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 19.
Verlo Mattress is more than just another mattress store. They're building better sleep for Dane County with handcrafted mattresses made to order right in Madison. And since they live there too, they make every dollar spent matter, actively partnering to benefit the community. You may even see Maddie the mattress mascot bouncing with joy around town. In this new year, get what you deserve. A mattress that supports your dreams. American made, locally crafted.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
When the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without
30
meds.
seconds.
Thank
Now,
you.
that's a tough pill to swallow.
let's prepare so we all have a better story.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our producer and engineer, on this Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Great to have you along. It's a great day to be a Wisconsinite. 6 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the big program. Mr. Zommers, it's Wednesday. It is
Hump Day.
Look at that. Hump Day extraordinaire. We are expecting our friend Trygve Olsen, senior advisor at the Lincoln Project, to be joining us here at some point here in hour. He's a busy man out there in D.C., as we said, maybe shoveling out a little bit after. They do not, believe me, they're not used to snow out there in D.C. When I used to go out there occasionally when I worked for former Congressman Scott Klug, I was out there one time, and I think they got 1.5 inches of snow in D.C., and you would have thought it was snow apocalypse. They were freaking out with just 1.5 inches of snow out there in D.C. So they got some places got a foot of snow. So they're going crazy out there in D.C. So we'll check in with Trygve here in a little while, talk about the start of the 119th Congress out there in our questions capital, and also, what is the most fertile state in the United States?
I hope you're talking about soil.
No, I am not. I am not talking about soil. We're going to the fertility rates in northern Wisconsin are on the decline, and we may have a problem here. So we'll talk to our resident northern Wisconsinite of why fertility rates are going down in northern Wisconsin. I'm not sure about that. Also, what's worse for you here in hour number 2 as well. But yes, joining us from our nation's capital, he has managed to dig himself out of Snowmageddon out there in D.C., our very own Trygve Olsen, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. Trygve, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Todd. What a joke. My girls have been off from school for 3 additional days. They call it a snow day. I call it a Wednesday.
How much did you actually get there where you're at?
I don't know, like 8 inches, something.
Yeah.
Not much.
Wow. I said when I worked for Klug.
Not enough that it kept me from driving around, Todd.
You're a northern Wisconsin boy at heart, right?
It's true.
When I used to work for Klug, I was out there one time, and I think they got 1.5 inches of snow, and you would have thought it was the blizzard of the century. They went nuts.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, they clean out the stores. There's no toilet paper. There's no food.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It's crazy.
I don't know what would happen if something real happened.
Right?
Be a mess.
Well, it's great to have you along. You've been off for a couple of weeks, and a mutual friend of ours, she contacted me, and she goes, "Have you heard from Trygve? He's okay. I can't get a hold of him." I said, I think he just unplugged, and it turns out that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, I did.
Good
Turned
for
off
you.
my phone, got off social media, didn't read the news.
Really? Wow. Just chilled
Spent
out.
time with my kids, went skiing at some hill in Pennsylvania because they wanted to learn on my birthday. turned 57, Todd.
I know. When we
old.
talked, Kreitlow said he wanted me to pass on that he thinks you're avoiding him now because you're so close in age now. You're only a year apart.
Only a year apart. Somehow I remember being in middle school when he was on WEAU, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong about that. And he still has a much better head of hair than either one of us combined. So,
It might be my buddy Rick Foy up at UWRF who was on when I was in middle school. Sports with Rick Foy. And Rob Kryback, who's back in the state legislature.
Yes. Pat Kreitlow's doppelganger.
We should have them on to reminisce about the old times. Maybe not so much about talking about the new times, but we could have them on to talk about the old times.
Well, let's start off a big hour here, Power Hour with Trigby Olson. Right away, right out of the gate, Trigby, one of your fans is on the phone. Matt, listening in Middleton on WMDX.
Oh, yeah.
Matt, thanks for listening. You had a question for Trigby. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks again for what you do, and I hope that it'll continue through the next 4 years and you won't bow down to the orange clown. Speaking of the orange clown, throughout his career in politics, campaigning especially, there's been clear similarities between him and Hitler that with his speech, and we know about the stuff that has happened, but the question for Trigby is about this new one and messaging for those who want to be the resistance, so to speak. This mention of going after Greenland and this expansionist attitude, taking Canada, this nonsense, it turns out Hitler spoke about similar things, expanding his territory. It would be good for the country, blah, blah, blah. So when you message and want to resist these things, how do podcasters and Democratic politicians bring attention to this similarity and the dangers of it without bringing up Hitler all the time, which tends to be ignored or not taken seriously?
Right.
Matt, I think that was one of the best questions we've had in a long time. Appreciate your listenership. Trivia, I do think it's a great question. What do you think?
I think comparing him to Hitler is to Matt's point is not the way to go. I actually was a little late getting on because I wanted to squeeze in. I have a work trip this weekend, and so I wanted to squeeze in a workout with my friend Jeff, who is my trainer guy. And so that's why I was a few minutes late. I mentioned to him about Greenland and Trump, and I know he voted for Trump. And I had said to him, I don't think you're going to get what you think. He's a younger guy. And when I said that to him, he's just like, really? Like, Greenland? And I'm like, yep. I think, it has to be in the context that people understand. Imagine, you can say, well, that's just Trump. He doesn't mean it. Right. Okay, he doesn't. I doubt we're going to invade Greenland, and I don't really think the Canadians are going to want to become the 51st state. But that said, imagine, and you got to get people to get this in the context. Imagine if your neighbor talked about your property line that way.
Right.
Right? Like, would you want somebody like that? It's not a way that you win friends and influence people. And I think, somebody was saying to me who literally was involved in negotiating the Panama Canal Treaty out here, was trying to ascertain what Trump's strategy was. And they were talking about the Chinese and this and that. I don't think there is any strategy to this. I think it just is sort of free rap. And we have to point out the ridiculousness of this.
Yeah, and
are we really going to sacrifice American lives to take Toronto?
Well, I mean, and Trump was saying, I think either yesterday or this morning, something like that he's now, if Denmark won't hand over Greenland, that he's going to imply these big tariffs on Denmark. My God, Denmark! You're part of the EU, part of NATO, an ally. It's so preposterous. I mean, literally, Trigby, you know this better than anybody else I know. Let's just play this out for a second. Let's just humor it. Let's say Trump used military force, which he alluded to yesterday, to take Greenland from the Danes. That would be an attack on a NATO ally, and everybody else in NATO would be obligated to come to Denmark's defense, right? We've suddenly now got a war with Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Here's the thing. Like, it's part of NATO. It already, I don't know. I just think I just think you gotta, people have it in the context of like, well, he doesn't really mean any of this. Just imagine, go back to high school if you had somebody talking to you like this and being a bully like that.
It's
Like,
bad to the point. It's really terrible for international
and
diplomacy
this is
international
how it's
relations.
making Americans look.
Right.
Terrible.
Around the world. Yeah.
Yes.
But to the point, a lot of this, I think, and that's why we haven't spent a lot of time on all these ridiculous things he's been saying lately. It's because a lot of it is just noise, and I think it's meant to, in part, distract from the real things that are going on in Congress, or what he hopes to get through in this omnibus bill that will have real effects on American lives. 855-752-4842, 855-752-482. Gene from Eau Claire listening on WCFW, the tap up there. Gene, always a pleasure. Thanks for calling in. Happy New Year. What say you?
Well, same to you guys. Hey, you know what? Now, we cannot no longer make excuses for his behaviors being distractions. He is a criminal. He has a history of lying and snake oil sales. He has a history of going after people. He has a history of suing people for his whole life just to push off the hearings and the trials and his being accountable until the people can't afford to keep going, but yet he did it in the United States of America and everybody fell for it. He's not being held accountable. We have a criminal who is getting worse and worse with his mental capacity and his obsessive, compulsive, neurotic, and bullying behavior. I mean, this right now is an example of how the head person of these United States of America, representing every single person in this country, and nobody can say, oh, yeah, he's just being a bully or he's just trying to distract. No, he represents us. That's the United States there. That's what we are. That's what the people voted for, and they need to start paying attention, and if they don't like it, they better start calling the representative and saying, enough is enough. We want sanity back in our country, and we want people taking us seriously. This impacts everything in our country. So thank you guys for keep doing the great work. I'm sorry to be a negative lady, but God darn it, I'm going to be 70 soon. I can't see this. This makes me sick. I've never seen this in my life. This is America, and we need to change it. Thank you guys. Have a good day. Bye.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Gene. Trigby, thoughts?
Well, I mean, that was well said. It's true.
I want to get back to, we have about a minute left before the first break. I want to get back to the point that the earlier caller made, which Matt was as someone who is an expert strategist, marketer, messenger is the word I was looking for, who's done messaging at the highest levels politically in this country. I mean, what do you think the proper messaging is to take on Trumpism in America?
Well, so I think a few things. It's funny you asked that because I spent the last several days working on a presentation for my trip this weekend to this thing I'm going to on that exact topic. One, we have to recognize this is a long game. He's going to be there for 4 years in theory. So that's number one. Number two, you can't fight every battle. So you have to pick the big ones. And the reality is we're becoming a world where people are very cognitively reflexive. So they're just instant reaction, not thinking through. And we can talk more about that on the other side, but that's an important part of it.
There you go. There's a little tease for you. Look at Trigby Olson, the broadcaster extraordinaire. More with him and your calls as well. 855-752-4842 is a Wednesday edition of the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Madison's real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
That was a really good question from Matt. That was really well thought.
Yeah. You need a company you trust to get things working again, quickly and affordably. Madison Computer Works has been doing that for business.
We also have a comment from Jeff Perry. Triggs maybe want to know this sad news. Beach Cheney, guitarist in the Suburbs, died on Sunday. He was 68, and he died while swimming in the Pacific Ocean.
Oh my God.
That sucks.
Well, thanks
so
for
of course I'll play some of the Suburbs on the way in. So.
That, yeah. Love is the law.
Computers that work for you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Even though it's sad news,
thanks.
thanks for passing that on.
Yeah, I know Oh, I love the pizza.
It's the problem with getting old.
Right, and they have
48
I know,
beers
right?
on tap and a great selection of wines.
And the atmosphere.
Not only is the restaurant gorgeous,
that room with the
giant windows that
oh,
open,
yeah.
and they won a Best of Madison Gold Award this year.
I love Sugar River
Pizza on Cabela Drive in Sun Prairie.
You took the words right out of my
mouth.
Yep. SugarRiverPizza.com.
Oh, so you have heard of it.
There was a time when barbecue was
Sugar River
perfect.
Pizza, great
a
place to have
strong,
pizza.
reliable flavor that could be counted on. But then
Have you had
big
pizza there?
manufacturers
Yeah, I've
decided
eaten there
that
several times.
barbecue needed
I
to
have
be
not.
zesty
Really?
or spicy.
I've been to the
or
one
sweeter or
in Verona.
whatever. If you miss the good old
Other
days
places.
of great tasting barbecue, we'd
I'll be
like to
right back.
introduce you
All right.
Sounds good.
to Grandpa's Barbecue. Made in small batches from Grandpa's original recipe. Buy yours online today at grandpasbarbecueshop.com.
This message is sponsored by WithCaregiver.com. Now is the time to start a meaningful career as a caregiver. Make a real difference in people's lives.
I have to go out to Oregon, Todd.
Gives you two
What are you
great
going to
options
Oregon for,
free.
Trigby?
I'm speaking at this thing.
Oh, look at Trigby.
And you know what? I'm
What?
leaving Oregon on Sunday morning on a 5 a.m. flight. Do you know why, Todd?
10
Why?
seconds.
Because it's the only thing that will get me back in time to watch the Packers.
Priorities in order.
Paid $300 to change to a 5 a.m. flight.
Connoisseur of great music. It's on his Spotify playlist. Trigby Olson, senior advisor of the Lincoln Project, like myself, a former Republican, like myself, a Wisconsin boy, dealing with the snow problems in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where he joins us from, his home in D.C. That's on your playlist, a little suburbs, Trigby. And our friend and ongoing contributor, Jeff Perry, letting us know via Facebook, saying you might want to know the sad news. Beach Cheney, guitarist in the suburbs, died apparently this past Sunday. He was 68 and tragically died while swimming in the Pacific Ocean. Sad news.
That is sad news, actually. I used to see the suburbs at First Avenue up in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm. No, I know you've seen him before, and
yeah, number one played song last year on my Spotify was "Rattle My Bones," and you know that we have the family account, so you can also look at what the number one song is for the family. Guess what the number one song for the family was by who? Guess
By
the
the
artist.
Suburbs?
It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in her family. No, it's all Taylor Swift. Because my daughters, they completely. She dominates music, not only globally, but within my house. I didn't even know it. Whereas I have this esoteric, like, top 10 list. ABBA, you know, like the Suburbs, Motley Crue. I'm all over the place.
But you're a good Swiftie dad. You're taking your girls to see the Taylor Swift.
You need to
Big
calm down,
you're
Todd. I know you got a face for television and the talent for radio, but you need to calm down. Just shake it off, baby.
Yeah, right. Big question of the year. Will Taylor and Travis get engaged this year?
I thought they were going to do it at Christmas, but
me too, a
who
little
knows? I don't know.
I think they're just
Honestly,
happy
you
being-
know what? Like, it's...
Who cares? Just be happy.
Yeah, they seem happy. I'm happy for them. They seem like nice people.
They do.
But, you know, you never really know because you don't really know them, which is part of the whole thing.
Part of the
Which,
shtick.
getting back to the tease that I gave, right? So here's the thing.
Just to refresh listeners, we're talking about the question was asked earlier that Trigby, who's done messaging for presidential candidates like John McCain and others. What is the proper messaging when we're going up against Trump and Trumpism? And you said you're going to do a talk on this soon, and you're running through these.
Yeah, so if you think about the election, this last election that we had, you know, I have a guy who works for me, Andrew, who talks about it as a rubber band election, right? And then we saw this in our research. So, you know, for the Democrats, it was really a rubber band election. So when Biden was the nominee, you know, Trump was ahead, but Trump's support was pretty consistent. So that rubber band had gone in. It wasn't tight. And then Harris became the nominee, and by the convention, it expanded. Then it came back in. Then it expanded out after the debate. And what I think happens here is we have become much more cognitively reflexive. And what that means is there's two types of thinking that we as humans do. There's system one thinking, which is habit. And think about it this way, Todd. When you were learning to drive a car, you were having to use system two thinking. You were using your brain to drive the car, your conscious brain. You're thinking, oh, I got to hit the pedal. Oh, I got to turn the wheel, right? Now when you drive the car, having ridden in the truck with you, like you're eating a sandwich, you got your left, so you're putting the butter on it. You know, you might be drinking a coffee, like you're looking at me, waving your arms, flapping, right? You're not,
don't make
you're
Mark nervous.
you're using system one thinking. It's habit.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So as we've moved into a world of social media, Google, all these things, we have become very reflexive in our thinking, and we just revert to habit. And that's what was happening. The places where Trump struggled and Harris did well were the places that people were watching unfiltered, not relying on the news, not relying on social media, paying attention. Things like the debate, the convention, right? Mm-hmm. And so as we look forward to the Trump era and administration, it's going to be those moments that break through. January 6th was a moment like this, 9/11. Those are the moments that shape narratives when people are seeing things unfiltered, and then they go into this process of it's being processed and they revert to system one thinking. The key is going to be when these things happen that are system two, where people are like, wow, shocked into actually thinking about it. This is not who I am. Then pivoting into reminding them every day why that matters. Because you're not going to break through on all these small things.
Right.
Because they're just falling into, right, nothing.
Yeah.
So to play the long game, it's got to be in and around. And I think the Trump world and the extremes, maybe on both sides, understand they can play, they're effectively playing a long game to reshape narratives. The other side, when these events have to happen, they have to recognize what are the narrative shaping events, and they have to pound on them.
So when his administration actually does something egregious or atrocious, that's when
when they drop paratroopers into when they drop paratroopers into Toronto and people are watching it on TV, or something, I mean, whatever, into Greenland,
that's
right?
Not
like,
happen.
No, I know, but no, I don't think it's going to happen. But those are the kinds of things the things that are seen unfiltered. Because remember, most people are consuming their information now in very quick doses while they're doing multiple things. Right. It's very rare that you're having these moments and events where people are actually processing in themselves with their conscientious part of their brain, system two thinking.
Yeah. I think your point, well, go ahead.
No, and that has to become the drivers of narratives.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with what you just said, because I think, again, all these outrageous things, and I respect Gene's point earlier, that I think it is terribly a bad reflection on us as Americans, and you said this, all this outrageous stuff that Trump says, and it is terrible and it's disturbing. But I think it's really important for those of us who want to cut through and actually make a difference to say, okay, let's put all the hyperbole stuff, as atrocious as it is, aside, and focus on the actions, and let's look at the things we can say that are non-debatable, as much as non-debatable things can be in 2025 when you see it with your own eyes. I think January 6th is a perfect example. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and maybe we will on the other side, about Brad Schimmel. I mean, the guy that wants to be on the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, coming out and defending January 6th insurrectionists. I mean, that people saw January 6th. That's indisputable. Yeah. We'll come back, talk more about that with Tracy Olson. Take your phone calls as well. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show for a Wednesday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Using great conversation, 92.7 WMDX. You can always
Tony
continue the
asks,
conversation
the
on
top of your
social media.
playlist wasn't
Share
Peacock
your
from Katy
thoughts
Perry?
when you find and follow Civic Media on
No,
Facebook,
it wasn't.
X,
And he also has another
That
question.
song is obnoxious.
Tony, why?
Yeah, it's a
why-
terrible song.
So, what do you do when he isn't actively doing crazy things? My first guess would be building your own narrative about what we could be doing right now and building a shared vision around what we want. Okay? Very good.
Yeah, it has to be aspirational and it has to appeal to people's underlying values and make them understand the cognitive dissonance between the roles they play in people's lives who matter. And we have to be giving people tools for how they have conversations with those they care about. And that requires asking questions and listening, not preaching.
Yeah.
That way, something
Yeah.
like a
Well
raisin,
said.
which has a bunch of natural sugar, doesn't get preferential treatment over the cranberry with its added sugar. Wisconsin grows more cranberries than any other state. We're responsible for 62% of the nation's supply. And what began as a beauty pageant after World War II has turned into a position as the voice of agriculture for Wisconsin. And now it's time for our next Alice in Dairyland. Here's Melissa Kay.
The next Alice in Dairyland will begin in July, and the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection is already looking for the next candidate. The 77th Alice in Dairyland, Haley Heinzel, said she's excited to work with the top candidates applying for the position.
We are opening applications for the 78th Alice in Dairyland. Those will be opening on January 2nd, and so I'm really excited to be seeing who is interested in becoming Alice in Dairyland next year.
The position requires extensive travel throughout the state while promoting Wisconsin's agriculture industry and its impact on the state economy. Alice in Dairyland is not only about sharing the stories of agriculturists, but also inspiring the next generation to continue the legacy. Applications are now being accepted for the position of the 78th Alice in Dairyland and must be received by 4:30 p.m. on January 31st. You can find out more at aliceinDairyland.com.
I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. Thanks for listening. This is 92.7 WMDX News.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. Demi Moore is getting rave reviews regarding her acceptance speech for her Best Actress Golden Globe. Moore won for her role in the film The Substance. She says the Golden Globe was the first award she had ever won for acting in her 45-year career. The actress says she was at a low point in her career when what she called an absolutely bonkers script came across her desk. She agreed to do the role, and the rest is, as they say, history. The holidays continue for Zendaya and Tom Holland. The couple, who have been dating since 2021, are reported to be engaged, according to TMZ. The couple shared the screen in 3 Spider-Man films, but typically do not walk the red carpet together. Holland says he was not with his fiancée at the Golden Globes, so she could enjoy her moment. Zendaya was nominated in the Best Actress category for the film
Apparently
Challengers.
on Monday,
I
Ben
think they
Wickler
will
went
each
to the
make a great first
DNC
spouse.
Disability
For more showbiz
Caucus,
fun, tune in to
and
Nightlight
it
with
was a
me,
great
Pete Schwaba,
conversation.
Weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m.
But
on the
the
Civic
meeting
Media
was not
Radio Network.
accessible.
Enjoying this local program?
So his
Find the
tweet
complete
is,
Civic
this is
Media lineup
unacceptable.
at
You can't have a meeting
civicmedia.us
about
or
disability
the
not
Civic Media
accessible for people with disabilities.
Partly cloudy and crisp today. Temperatures only climb to the low 20s and plummet to near 10 tonight. Waking up tomorrow morning, we could see some sunshine with clouds increasing and temperatures rising to the upper 20s. Some light snow moving in at night. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 19.
The John and Gordy Show.
Well, Bob Woodward, ever since
All right, we'll try and get
All
to,
the President's
what's
Men,
worse
along
here
with Carl
at some point.
Bernstein,
Yeah.
they basically blew the cover off of the Watergate scandal.
That's right, with Deep Throat.
And that's a great movie, by the way.
Deep Throat? I saw that.
No, I meant All the President's Men, but thank you for that. All right.
Linda Lovelace was a great performer.
Weekday morning, 6 till 8 on 92.7 WMDX and the Civic Media app.
Ever tried balancing a dozen eggs in one hand while hopping on one foot? Or maybe juggling cats while riding the unicycle? Sounds ridiculous, right? But guess what? That's exactly what texting while driving is like. Your human brain only has the capacity to focus on one thing at a time. So when you're behind the wheel, give driving your undivided attention.
30 seconds.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
the boards when you least expect it. On the ice hockey rinks, Trygve Olsen, always a great guest, always a great hockey player as well, and his lifelong dream to drive a Zamboni. Welcome back to the show on the Civic Media Radio Network, 34 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock on this Wednesday, January 8th. Trygve Olsen, of course, senior advisor at the Lincoln Project. Played any hockey over the holidays, Trygve?
I did.
How'd you do?
I did. It was good. I tweaked my back, though, a bit. That wasn't great. No. Part of age, you know.
All right, lots to get to here in this last half hour. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842, talking a little bit about Trygve's experience being a messenger for different political campaigns and parties over the years. What's the best way to message against Trumpism? Not our friends and neighbors necessarily, but Trump himself and Trumpism. Going through some of those quickly, Trygve, Tony, watching on YouTube, asking and putting in here, and based on what you said before, Tony says, so what do you do when Trump isn't actively doing crazy things? My first guess would be building your own narrative about what we could be doing right now and building a shared vision around what we want. Thank you, Tony. Trygve?
Yeah, and I think it has to be a shared vision of contrast, right? And it really, the contrast needs to be one foundationally, are we a nation that has faith in each other and trust in each other, or are we a nation that fears each other? Mm-hmm. And that really ultimately is what this comes down to. What are we going to be? Because the world that's, you know, if you look at we're reiterating it again, but like, what's he trying to do with Denmark? Create fear, right? Like, get your way through fear. And what we've traditionally done is gotten our way through having trust in each other, that we can find common ground, that we can, you know, all benefit. And so it really is a contrasting worldview between a win-win world where we all benefit from each other, or is there some world where I get what I want at your expense?
I'm only half joking about this. I have a very good friend in Denmark, former member of parliament, former, it's their equivalent to Secretary of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Christian Jensen, who's been on this program before, and he's been asking me to go for years, and I haven't gone. I'm thinking, Trygve, this is our chance. We do this show in Denmark and talk to a former member of parliament. How about that?
I love it. Copenhagen's one of my favorite cities in the world.
I've never been.
Better yet, let's do it from Greenland. I've never been to Greenland either.
Well, if anybody could get us on Greenland, especially this time of year, I'm sure it was Christian. But no, I mean,
I don't even know if there's flights to Greenland. There's got to be flights to Greenland.
Probably. I think Don Jr. is going over there, so you know
he did, yeah.
But no, I think your point is well taken. This is about fear. We have to stand up to that, and then not let the shiny object distract us from what's really going on. Anything before we move on from this, Trygve? Anything else that you wanted to get to on this messaging part?
Well, I think one of the things, you know, to Jeff's point, part of what has to be done is people need to not be afraid to speak up, and you know, within their family settings, with their friends, you know, because really there's a desire to make people be afraid to express dissent or being unhappy with what they're seeing, and it's important that people not feel that way. And I know during the election, there were people who felt like, well, I can't speak up because I'll be for thinking different.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I think now if there's any time to have courage right now, it's the current day, 2025, right?
Right. And I mean, think about it. For centuries, the people thought the world was flat. You'd sail off the edge. So.
Steve, listening in Milwaukee, NWAUK, says, this is funny. Fox put out a poll that a majority of Americans think Biden is the worst president ever. America chose to follow its worst instincts on false pretenses, just like Germany did in 1930s. That is the comparison, all in the name of white supremacy and gaslighting by the billionaires who own the media and who told so many lies based on bigotry and misguided fears of immigrants and people who want to be just like themselves. Nobody should trust anything that comes out of Fox, quote unquote, so-called news. They paid almost $800 million for defamation and admitted in court they are not a news source, just entertainment. I mean, I think I would agree that Fox News is not necessarily a reliable source. But I think it goes beyond that to just making sure that folks listen to a variety of sources and focus on those things, like you said it so well, things that are undisputably factual and true that we all see or listen for ourselves, and start there.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that people have to understand in a state like Wisconsin, or quite frankly across the country, Donald Trump got more votes than Harris did. So, like, to be saying, constantly using word Germany in the 30s when we're not, having spent a bunch of time in Germany and helped run elections there for Merkel once long ago, the reality is saying that is not going about it that way is not constructive to getting those people that were lost and who voted for Trump but were uncomfortable with these aspects of Trump, suggesting that they voted for, America being Germany in the 30s. The way you contrast this is to be reminding them, well, they might like pieces of the policy. The bigger issue of the crazy things that get said and done are far greater than whatever, they might get for a tax cut or whatever.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we talked for over an hour about Brad Schimmel, the former Republican Attorney General of Wisconsin, who is now running for state Supreme Court. And he came out on Vicki McKenna's show last week on Thursday supporting the January 6th insurrectionists, say they didn't get a fair deal in trial. We brought up this one guy from Pulaski, Wisconsin, who had pled guilty to
Riley Casper, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Riley Casper, who used bear spray to attack Capitol police officers and then bragged about it on his social media. And for someone like Schimmel to say that guy should go free or didn't get a fair shake, I think that's right of even some soft Trump voters, Trigby. And we even played a cut from Glenn Grothman from the RNC this summer when you and I were down in Milwaukee. And even Glenn Grothman said, yes, if it's provable and where someone who has actually attacked a police officer, yes, even Glenn Grothman thinks those people should stay in jail. And Brad
absolutely.
Schimmel, absolutely. Brad Schimmel thinks otherwise. I just don't think that's conducive to the majority of Wisconsinites here to not back the blue.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I think the other thing is for people who are tuning in, I'm sure Vicky followed that up with the question of, so Brad, you've lost faith in the judicial system, and yet you're running for the state Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin. How does that work?
She did not.
She didn't? I'm shocked. Because if he had come on this station, he would have gotten asked that question by you and I, which is a fair follow-up question.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
That's
because,
what we're missing.
Yeah, well, because, yeah.
Chris, listening in Janesville via WMDX. Great to have you along, Chris, on a Wednesday afternoon. Great question here, Trigby, for you. He says, I have a 65-year-old coworker that is now constantly trying to convince the new 24-year-old coworker that the MAGA agenda is the way to go. Advice, please. Great question.
So well, without knowing the specifics of what sort of values the 24-year-old holds, it's a little bit hard, but the key in that is going to be spending time thinking about how does that person see themselves outside of their politics, the 24-year-old, and asking probing questions about do they agree or disagree in leading them to the understanding that what the colleague is suggesting probably doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that is questions, are you willing to go if he's serious about invading Panama to take back the canal? Are you at 24 willing to go and sacrifice yourself for the Panama Canal, which since 1974 has been in Panamanian hands and American ships cross through it whenever they need to, or not? Right?
Yeah,
Are you willing to have a fight with Mexico? I mean, those are the kinds of probing questions that have to be asked. Like, what do you think about this? Is this creating a more stable world or a less stable world?
Mm-hmm. I think what you said, and it goes along with what you said off the air too a little while ago, which is listening. And I think you're absolutely right. So Chris, I mean, if I were you, I'm not in the business of giving advice, but But if I were you in your shoes, like what Trigby has talked about countless times in this show is, whether you have a beer, whether you have coffee, just chilling out with this coworker and ask those questions and then listening. And if they slightly disagree with you, don't immediately cut that person off and say, what the blankety blank is the matter with you? Listen and find out what those values are.
Ask questions in the context of what you have in common. If somebody were acting like that at work, how would you respond?
Right. I mean, the person next to you that works on, you're a coworker on the assembly line or wherever the business is that may be not a white straight person. And you say, well, do you think so-and-so is a decent? Yeah, they seem like a chill person. Well, I mean, do you think that they deserve to be discriminated against or their family should be, sent back or rounded up because they look a certain way? Well, no, that person's chill. Exactly.
Right. Do you want government, something that's important to them? Do you want government, telling you what kind of shotgun you can own? No.
Right.
Well, do you think other people would want government telling them what they can and can't do? You have to point out the inconsistencies through probing questions that relate directly to them in context.
Agreed. All right, let's have a little fun. Mr. Zomer, it's time once again at 15, now 16, make it 14 before the hour. Time once again for What's Worse. Let's go.
This or that, this or that. But of course, the choice is yours. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this.
Time now to play a speed round of What's Worse. Your chance to have your voice heard across statewide radio, all 11 stations in our News Talk Sports Network, the largest privately owned state radio network in the state of Wisconsin. Glad to have you along. All right, what's worse, spicy or bland? Spicy or bland? What's worse? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842, or you could text us on the Civic Media app. By the way, Chris in Janesville says, thank you so much for that answer. This is why I tune in on my days off. Well, thank you, Chris. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, we really do appreciate that. What do you think, Trigby? What's worse, spicy or bland?
I think this is a foolish question. Bland.
No, it's not, because what's worse? I mean, I've eaten a lot of meals with you, and I wouldn't call you a picky eater. You pretty much eat.
I like spicy food. This is like what's worse, having all your teeth knocked out or the Vikings winning the Super Bowl? Of course, Vikings winning the Super Bowl is worse. I'd rather lose all my teeth.
But see, I enjoy a little spice, but I would say that spicy is worse because if I get a plate of something that's too spicy, I can't unspice it. If I get something like that kind of tastes bland, I can always put salt, pepper, flakes, whatever. You can doctor it up. You can't undoctor its food that's too spicy.
No. Bland is far worse.
Well, you have a brand new listener agreeing with you on WXCO in Wausau, saying bland is worse.
Yes, 100%. It's like hot or cold outside. Hot is way worse because...
Jeff, watching on YouTube, says spicy is worse. Thank you, Jeff. You always add things but never take it out. See? I agree with him 100%. Roger, watching on Facebook.
You people are glass half empty.
So Roger, watching on Facebook, says bland is worse. So he agrees with Trigger.
Thank you, Roger.
855-752-4842. Let's go quickly. Chris in Janesville. Chris, what's worse, spicy or bland?
You guys got me all twisted up. I say bland is worse.
You say what?
Bland is worse, but when I go to a restaurant, I don't carry pepper flakes in my pocket, so I say bland is worse.
Well, you're just plugging trivia. I'm not saying I carry it with me. I'm just saying normally there's something available. All right, we'll come back. What's worse? Thank you, Chris. What's worse, spicy or bland? 855-752-4842. Wrap it up here on the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. We're actually getting a lot of responses.
There's a lot of texts.
Yeah, right.
Who came up with this question?
CP, Chris Pauls. Trigby does not appreciate the question.
No. I don't. I think it's a dumb question.
Oh, okay. Then you start writing for the show.
Tony thinks you need to go on more road trips in Wisconsin to reconnect with the people.
Me?
No,
Me,
I fully.
Tony, or Trigby?
Yeah,
which
Todd.
one? Which one?
Todd.
Trigby. He said
Oh,
Trigby.
Trigby. See? Yeah.
No. Are bratwursts bland? No, Tony. Bratwursts are, and it's why I always order spicy Italian sausage rather than bratwurst.
Specifically mentioning brats is a good point because if the brat's a little spicy, it's still very flavorful. But if the brat's bland, adding pepper flakes is not going to fix that. It's just going to be like, well, this is
100%.
technically food.
But if it's something that's too spicy, then I get like, you get like you're burping it up and you're belching and you got stomach problems.
Might need to call the plumber.
Right?
You sound like my daughter who's lactose intolerant.
Well, you want to know something? I'm totally serious on this, by the way.
What?
Get her on Organic Valley milk. Because I had some of the same issues. I started drinking Organic Valley milk from Wisconsin in 2007 when I was down in Florida. I'm serious.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, Organic Valley.
Might be hard to get in D.C., but
I bet you not. I bet you the stores in D.C. have Organic
No, they
Valley.
have it. They have it.
See?
okay.
They have it.
There you go.
They do.
20
Milk
seconds.
from
Actually, they don't have anything right now because there was 2 inches of
much
snow.
All right. Welcome back to the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 9 before the hour at 2 o'clock. At the top of the hour, ABC, CBS News. Check of weather and sports. Our great sports reporter, Mike Clemens, talked to a Packer owner about the Packers in a minute. And then after that is the Maggie Dawn Show. Every afternoon from 2 until 4, join Maggie Dawn. And then at 4 o'clock, Dom Selvia. 6 o'clock, Pete Schwaba and Nightlight here on the Civic Media Radio Network. The question at the moment, and Trigby does not like this one, what's worse, spicy or bland? What's worse, spicy or bland? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842.
We just got a text from Jude in East Troy that says bland is worse. Too spicy, drink milk with it or after. And I think with that, I am going to say I think bland is worse because specifically for this reason. Because of that, you can drink milk with it to chill out the spiciness. Also because if one of my friends has food that's too bland, they'll eat it anyway. If they have food that's too spicy, I can eat it.
Well, okay, there's that. See, I love milk, Organic Valley milk, but I don't want it with something spicy. That's just, no. Matt Middleton says bland is worse and boring.
Mm-hmm.
Like talking to a conservative about anything other than money. Spicy is better for our colons too, and I'm old. Really? I did not know that. All right, back at the home station, WRCE, just south of there, beautiful Muscadet. Kimber Muscadet says bland is worse. I'd rather die of any spice than be subjected to bland food. All right. Todd, listening in Oshkosh on WISS, spicy is worse. And I'm not a glass half full person. I understand the glass is refillable. Nicely done, Todd. I agree with you. Jude in East Troy, bland is worse. That's the one about drinking milk. And then Scott in Madison on WMDX, you're not going to say black pepper is too spicy? Or the next thing you're going to say is black pepper is too spicy? No, I love black pepper. I'm talking about like hot jalapeno stuff. Like a little bit for some warmth is fine, but people are like, oh, let's see how hot I can make it. Let's see if I can sweat while I eat. Who wants to do that? Are you one of those people? I mean, you don't really order things that spicy, do you, Trigby?
I do.
Do you really?
Yeah.
All right.
Not Indian food though in London. You
I
order
can only
very
imagine.
hot. It's like the Ted Lasso scene. Like that really happens.
Indian food in London, really spicy, is a different level.
Yeah,
oh Lord,
totally.
That brings up bad memories, but I won't go there right now. Anyway, the Packers, Trigby, I texted you in real time over the weekend interrupted your unpluggedness to say,
and you got a response.
And I got a response. I don't feel good. Packers lost, of course, to the Bears on Sunday in Lambeau. They are now the number 7 seed. They take on the 3 seed Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card game. Kickoff set for 3 o'clock on Fox on television. Pre-game show a couple of hours earlier in Richland Center, Park Falls, and Racine, Kenosha. Give us, you're an owner. You're an owner, a Packer owner, Trigby. You got the rest of the show. Let's talk Packers.
Yeah, I think they could win, but they could lose.
Wow, thank you for that really insightful detail.
I'm a little bit concerned, and it's not so much Christian Watson getting hurt. I mean, that
was
doesn't
just sad.
help. Not having Jair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not having Jair. Dobbs got sick. Like, bad luck. I'm more worried about the fact that Love has the elbow, and then Malik Willis, bad thumb, and I just think it's going to be hard. I've been to that stadium in Philly. It's a hard place to win. But I do think the Packers could get on a little bit of a roll here. I don't want to be a homer and be like Brady picking the Badgers to beat Alabama, for God's sakes. Like, I'm a realist.
You're never going to let them forget that. Yeah.
I'm not a homer. Comes with being an NFL owner. You have to be a realist, unless you're Woody Johnson. Then you just use Madden to make your calls. I think, it will be interesting to see. I wouldn't bet against Matt LaFleur coming up with a good game plan. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm more worried about the Vikings actually rolling through and getting to the Super Bowl. As much as I want to see the Packers get on a roll and win the Super Bowl, I'm more concerned about the Vikings winning the Super Bowl than I am optimistic about the Packers winning the Super Bowl.
Are you kidding me? Did you watch that Detroit Vikings game?
They did get kicked.
The Lions look unstoppable. I mean, I keep saying, look, they have so many injuries. They're running on adrenaline. At some point, these aggressive calls by Campbell and the adrenaline's going to run out. But I don't see any evidence of it, Trigby.
And they got bagged on after the draft about taking Gibbs.
Yeah.
Bad. Yeah. And the thing that's crazy about it is if you look at that draft, that's going to go down as one of the best drafts any team has had. They got Gibbs. They got Branch. They traded with the Packers for the pick that is Brian Branch. And then they got Laporta in that draft too. Like, yeah, I was shocked at how much they beat up on the Vikings. I don't know. I mean, Philly is a real Super Bowl contender too. I think the Packers are slightly less of a Super Bowl contender, and I think Detroit probably is I didn't think this. I think the Vikings really could do it too. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be a great weekend.
It is going to be a great weekend. I think if the Vikings had won that game and it was going to go through Minneapolis, then I tend to agree with you. But the fact that it's going through Detroit, I don't see anybody who's going to be able to stop them at this point in the NFC.
Well, it's an advantage for Detroit to be playing in Detroit, right? Indoors,
right, that's
like
it's
the perfect.
That's what I'm saying.
Fast turf.
I will say this: if somehow the Packers make it to the NFC Championship and it's at Detroit, I actually, for whatever reason, think that the Packers would have a shot at that game.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. 100%.
All right, Trigby, we appreciate you. Go Pack Go this weekend against the Eagles. We'll see you next Wednesday, my friend. We appreciate you.
We will see you on Wednesday. Oh, no, we won't see me on Wednesday because I'm traveling, but we'll talk about that offline. You'll see me a different day.
I'll see everybody else tomorrow. Stay tuned for Maggie Dawn. Thanks to Pat Kreitlow Zommers as well. Whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, do not give up. Keep banging your drum. See you tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you listening and watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.